Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni visiting Toronto this weekend. This is her first visit to Canada since being elected in 2022. And she's having a one-on-one meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau today before a dinner reception taking place tonight. So for more on this visit, let's bring in Aurel Braun, that is the Professor of International Relations and Political Science at the University of Toronto. Good afternoon, Aurel. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us. Let's start about the significance of this meeting and what you'll be watching for today.
We have an important relationship with Italy, a large trade relationship. Canada imports something like $12 billion. We export about $2.8 billion to Italy. There's a large Italian community in Canada, especially in Toronto. Also, both of the countries are members of the G7, and the Italians will be hosting the G7 meeting in June of this year. And Canada will be attending. So I think this relationship is important politically, economically, and culturally.
Mm-hmm. We understand as part of the meeting, the two leaders will be talking about the situation in Ukraine. What do you think could come of those conversations?
Both countries are supporters of Ukraine. They have denounced Russian aggression, but there are differences because in the case of Italy, they are trying to move towards meeting the 2% guideline of defense expenditures or GDP. Canada has not indicated that. In fact, we were told that we're trying to find in the defense area $1 billion worth of saving. So you see a very different kind of trajectory in the influence of the two leaders. Giorgia Meloni started her prime ministership with considerable skepticism internationally, but her influence has grown steadily. In the case of Mr. Trudeau, the trajectory has been very, very different. The relationship between the two leaders was strained a year ago. Mr. Trudeau had some very harsh words about Giorgia Meloni's policies on LGBTQ and on immigration. Now he has toned this down because I think he understands he has to improve those relations. There are differences in other areas as well. Giorgia Meloni is considerably more sympathetic to Israel, always denounces Hamas as a terrorist organization, one that ideologically tries to pit Islam against the West. And this is somewhat different, at least in tone, from Mr. Trudeau. So there are differences and there are shared interests.
Mm-hmm. I want to pick up on a comment you made. So it was last year, as you say, the G7, prior to the two meeting, the Prime Minister Trudeau shared some concerns about the Prime Minister Meloni's position when it comes to LGBTQ rights. Do you expect that to come up at all during these conversations? It sounds like you feel as though our Prime Minister has softened a little bit on his position on this when it comes to these conversations.
If it does come up, I think Mr. Trudeau will be considerably more cautious in the words that he uses. He has certainly toned down the criticism of Giorgia Meloni, and I think he understands the political reality that this is a leader who has grown in influence, which is quite different from his position internationally. So he cannot really afford to have another confrontation. It would be unwise politically for him to use the same kind of words, to use the same kind of criticism that he did a year ago.
Finally, I'll ask, will other leaders around the world, do you think, be watching the way these two interact later today and watching our relationship with Italy?
Obviously, since these are both G7 countries, there will be an interest, but there's more of an interest in the case of Italy because Giorgia Meloni has been very effective at boosting Italy's profile, at increasing her personal credibility internationally. And I think if they're looking at those two leaders, Giorgia Meloni would be the one who would generate significantly more interest internationally.
Aurel Braun with the University of Toronto joining us live ahead of this meeting today. Thank you, sir, for your time. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.